not only should whites and Jewish people learn up close and personal about the experience of slavery, but those of us who have had that heritage, we need to learn up close and personal the experience that the Jewish people have had.
My father wrote a note to Dr. King. The day we marched together out of Selma was a day of sanctification. There was passion from the prophets, passion from the Bible, from their religious spirit. Even without words, our march was worship. I felt my legs were praying.
We're pleased to welcome our good friend Stephen Ollendorff, founder of the Ollendorff Center for Religious and Human Understanding, and for the first time, Dr. Shari Rogers, who is president and founder of Spill the Honey organization. Welcome, both of you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Stephen's been with us many times talking about a range of important issues. For those who don't know, the Ollendorff Center is?
It's an organization that was initially designed to preserve Judaism primarily initially, and we didn't want Hitler to win the war by indifference or ignorance. But our voyage together has expanded the scope of what we're doing, and we've done very many exciting projects together. And I met Shari because I think we're going to try to address the issue of reparation in the Black and Jewish community.
Yeah. Also, a lot of Stephen's work with the Ollendorff Center talks about the Holocaust and having people understand the extraordinary, unimaginable implications of it. Shari, your organization, Spill the Honey, is?
Spill the Honey, basically the name itself best signifies its mission. It's like the cup runneth over. It's about the sweetness of relation. It's an educational platform to basically educate on the African American Jewish Alliance and the history of the Holocaust and the legacy of Martin Luther King, and how both of those legacies of discrimination and how we worked together during the 1960s during the coalition basically can be taught today to build relationships and tolerance and sweetness.
The Black Jewish Alliance. What is it historically and what is it today? Stephen, go.
It's a very complex issue. Blacks and Jews have had a history taken back from the Exodus, where they both had to leave their countries, prejudice, bias. We know about the Holocaust. We know about what happened to both Jews and blacks, during the 50s. My own personal example was, most of my family died in Germany. My father couldn't get a job at the Eye Institute because he was Jewish. Jewish people couldn't get into certain clubs, couldn't join corporations. So we felt the prejudice, and there was a commonality of interest at that particular point. I think subsequent to that, there's been a certain disengagement, we'll put it this way, I think, on issues where Jewish people instinctively don't like quotas because they're used to quotas on the negative end, not on the positive end. Right. And there was an instinctive reaction against that.
So that connectedness isn't there the way it was. Where are we today with Black-Jewish relations?
Well, I think we have a lot of work to do in terms of education. How, in particular, the film that I'm working on called Shared Legacies, the African-American...
Shared Legacies, I stepped on that, the African-American...
the African-American Jewish relations. I met Clarence B. Jones, who was Dr. King's personal attorney, and he promised Dr. King, actually in Harlem, he said to Dr. King, he said to Clarence, if the younger generation really does not remember the Jewish support during the civil rights movement, if there's a rise in anti-Semitism, please, Clarence, remind everybody. So I met Clarence Jones at the African American Museum, and so we formed this friendship, and now we're working together on this film about the
Powerful.
alliance.
People forget during the civil rights movement, some of who were killed were Jewish.
Absolutely.
And two very famous, well-known cases. Do your research on this, folks. Powerful stuff. Let me ask you this. The connection, how honest is the dialogue with a lot of the strife and a lot of the conflict today? How honest are the differences, at least the perceived differences, between the Black and Jewish community?
That's where I think you need a little bit of political incorrectness, because the Black community and the Jewish community have to realize that bias and prejudice against them will not stick to them. It'll wash over to both sides. In other words, you have to deal with the real issues that are confronting them, how to try to resolve those issues, because they've got to start talking to each other.
Why is it so hard?
Why is the relationship so
No,
hard?
why is it so hard to talk, honestly and candidly?
Well, I think what we learned about the alliance during the 60s is the relationships were real. They were
Yes.
based on real relationships. So the idea is that we have to start working together to form these real alliances that actually can make a difference.
Where is it happening in the country right now? Those real, meaningful conversations between blacks and Jews?
I think it's basically happening in certain organizations that encourage these alliances. I think definitely, like the NAACP works with different Jewish organizations to build this alliance.
Sure.
But that's why I think it's necessary to create a film to use as a vehicle to spark dialogue.
And that's a big part of film is to do that.
Absolutely, to re-educate and see the positive images of what brought us together initially. And through that platform, we can basically spark the dialogue and begin to remember the positive of the working relationships that we need to kind of reinvigorate today.
And your film, The Diary of Anne Frank, talk about the connection.
Well, that's the whole point. In the Diary of Anne Frank, we had Palestinian girls reading from Anne Frank, deciding that what they took from Anne Frank is they wanted education to be free of men, to be independent. And I thought about that a lot. And that's really how we got in touch, because I think if we had the same kind of documentary, which we're discussing, between black children or leaders discussing Anne Frank's vision and Jewish leaders discussing Martin Luther King's vision, that could start the conversation, because their visions, Anne Frank and Martin Luther King, I think is the winning formula.
It's interesting, you cannot have a meaningful conversation today unless you go back and put that historical relationship in context.
Well, especially when we think about Dr. King, we have to think about how inclusive he was. I mean, he really, in many of the stories of the Jewish biblical stories inspired the civil rights movement, the Exodus story. And he was so about the shared relationships
Yes.
and being inclusive. And I think to bring back his legacy and to remind people of that is really important today.
Finally, before I let you go, Stephen, how hopeful are you that things are going to get better?
I think that what's going on in the world today, responsible people have to revisit these issues, because, especially between blacks and Jews, is that no good will come out of them not cooperating together and seeking common goals.
And that's why we have Stephen Ollendorff and Dr. Shari Rogers with us. The Ollendorff Center for Religious and Human Understanding and Spill the Honey organization. Two powerful films, two great organizations, and two people trying to make a difference. Thank you for joining us on Public Broadcasting.
The preceding program has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating over 25 years of broadcast excellence, and 13 for WNET, NJTV, and WHYY. Funding for this edition of Caucus New Jersey has been provided by New Jersey Council of County Colleges, the Healthcare Foundation of New Jersey, Johnson & Johnson, Cone Resnick, Adler Aphasia Center, the New Jersey Office of the Insurance Fraud Prosecutor, and by NJ Best. Transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area. Caucus New Jersey has been produced in partnership with TriStar Studios.